Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming today. My name is Koze Araki, and I would like to thank all the Rotarians and the Rotary Center staff, and David and Lori, my host counselors, who helped me become a Peace Fellow and study here. Today, I'm going to talk about mother tongue-based multilingual education in Sub-Saharan Africa, learning from within. では、本日は母語教育について発表したいと思います。母語教育、もしくは継承語教育とも言われますが、母語教育の利点として、例えば生徒の積極性を促す、生徒の家族やコミュニティの関わりを高める、生徒の自信や自尊心を高めるといったことが挙げられます。ここまで私が日本語を話して、この会場のどれだけの人が理解をしているでしょうか。Repression of people's identity, culture, and language often leads to conflict. I also believe that having an access to education is a basic human right. It does give you a power to overcome challenges, violence, and also promote social mobility. Many of you might have been curious and tried to understand what I was saying in this Japanese slide. Imagine that you have to listen to an unfamiliar language in a classroom for days, weeks, months, and years. Sub-Saharan Africa is a region that lies south of the Sahara. I did not include countries in the southern part of Africa, which are generally considered as a part of the Arab world or the Middle East. They also use Arabic as an official or co-official language. Considering that the challenges and dilemmas regarding this topic are similar in the region, I generalized the issues in Sub-Saharan Africa. I'm also aware of my limitation, that stereotyping the educational issues in Sub-Saharan Africa as a region rather than addressing individual countries' needs. Now I would like you all to take a moment and imagine a picture of education in Sub-Saharan Africa. You might have pictured a classroom with children in uniform, staring at a blackboard. The classroom may not be well equipped. Children may look happy, serious, or tired. I'd like to leave this with you for now and come back to this point later. I will briefly explain the background of the topic. It is estimated that there are more than 2,000 languages spoken in the continent. Each country is culturally and linguistically diverse. In the late 19th century, under colonialism, the African continent was partitioned by the European countries without consideration in language and cultural coherence. After the political independence in 1960s and 1970s, many countries chose to retain the colonial languages as official languages because the political leaders believed that it would unite the citizens under the language, overcoming ethnic, cultural, and religious differences. It is also true that most of the people, particularly in the rural areas, do not speak official languages. As a result, many children begin school in a language that they do not fully understand. There have been international education policies that you might be familiar with, such as Education for All or Universal Primary Education, to provide educational assistance around the world. These policies used to focus on raising literacy rates and primary enrollment rates. However, little attention had been paid on what kind of education and what language to be used to achieve the goals. Many countries in Sub-Saharan Africa struggle with low literacy rates. When you look at the literacy rates in, for example, United Nations reports, it doesn't tell you which language is used to assess the rates, probably an official language. If children in a rural area are learning in an official language that they don't understand, the literacy rate must be low. The educationalists, sociologists, and linguists in the region have been advocating the right to use children's mother tongue as a medium of instruction at schools. The advocates see the connection between the educational challenges that the students have been experiencing and the official languages taught at schools which are not familiar to them. Mother tongue or first language education generally stimulates students' academic motivation, promotes students' family and community involvement because the students learn in their home language, builds confidence and self-esteem, and I think this is important in the post-colonial societies since local languages and cultures were consistently suppressed. Increases school attendance rate, enhances academic performance. There are also benefits for girls. Compared to boys, girls do tend to stay home longer and have less exposure to official languages or other languages. Some girls tend to avoid being ridiculed by speaking an unfamiliar language in classrooms. Now I will briefly discuss different bilingual models. L1 is first language and L2 is second language. The red part is when the language used as a medium of instruction. And G1 means grade 1 and G2 means grade 2, and so on. So subtractive model, this is not a bilingual model. This model uses students' second language from the beginning without using their first language at all. Many French-speaking or Portuguese-speaking countries in sub-Saharan Africa have been using these models inherited from the colonial era. The concept of the early exit is to begin teaching either partially or mainly with students' native language and switch to the second language after a short period, usually less than 5 years. The model aims to bring students quickly into the second language-only classroom. The late exit delays the transition from mother tongue as a medium of instruction to the second language in usually 5 to 6 years. These models aim at high level of proficiency in the mother tongue and the second language. Additive 1 uses both L1 and L2 as the medium of instruction. Additive 2, students learn in L1 and study L2 as a second language. In Additive 3, the medium of instruction will be changed from a student's first language to the second language, but they will continue to study their first language as a subject. There have been many bilingual education projects, such as in Burkina Faso, Ethiopia, Guinea-Bissau, Mali, Mozambique, Namibia, Niger, South Africa, and Tanzania. It is not clear how it started, but most of the bilingual education in sub-Saharan Africa adopt the early exit model with a few exceptions using the late exit. There are problems of using the bilingual model developed in North America and Western Europe. In the West, bilingual model has been developed to bring minority children, such as immigrant children and children from indigenous communities, to the mainstream culture. This is not the case for sub-Saharan Africa. There are social, political, and economic differences between the West and sub-Saharan Africa. In sub-Saharan Africa, the official languages are spoken by only the limited people, politicians, elites, and people in urban areas. The official languages are not taught at schools as a foreign language. Teaching in a foreign language is different from teaching in a mother tongue. Many teachers in sub-Saharan Africa do not know how to teach in a foreign language. As this illustrates, the current bilingual education in sub-Saharan Africa are supported by parents' expectation, they strongly believe that learning an official language will lead their children to better educational and economic opportunities. Mother tongue education, therefore, sometimes considered second-class education. Official language is widely used in the formal settings in the post-colonial societies, judiciary system, government, and higher education. Even after the political independence, the relationship with the former colonial countries are still strong. There is also a huge presence of European and North American textbook industry in sub-Saharan Africa. As I talked before, international education policies and assistance used to dismiss the language issues. There are still many challenges to introduce African languages to educational environment. Linguistic and technical challenges. Many African languages are already developed, so language development is necessary. It is important to strengthen the cooperation between neighboring countries which share the same language. If there are different languages spoken in a community, it may not be possible to use all the children's mother tongues at a school, but it needs to be at least a more familiar language rooted in the community. Financial challenges. Mother tongue-based bilingual education is often considered expensive. However, some suggest this argument is rather based on the fear of change. There is a positive example. Since Ethiopia radically changed its language policy in 1994, the country has introduced mother tongue bilingual education to schools in 21 languages in different regions. In the long term, it can be cost-effective, considering if the mother tongue education is the key to solve the current educational problems. Political challenges. Usually, politicians and elites are not very motivated for mother tongue education. They are the ones who are taking advantage of the power and money which have been inherited from the colonial past. I would like you to remember the pictures we saw at the beginning of the presentation. We have to remind ourselves that we who are providing educational assistance to sub-Saharan Africa have a particular kind of education in our minds. We may focus more on formal education. Some African writers claim that before colonization, indigenous people were learning in their own ways, in their own languages. This problem of language issues at schools derives from the inheritance of Western formal schooling introduced under colonization. More research is needed in multilingual education in sub-Saharan Africa, and multilingual models should be developed in each country and community's context. Education needs a holistic approach. Even if a mother tongue-based bilingual education is introduced, it wouldn't be successful where educational materials and resources are scarce and teachers do not have access to trainings and support. Also, the curriculum and learning materials should be culturally and locally responsive. The structure of the school system, the reliance on certain form of assessment, and curriculum in sub-Saharan Africa continue to resemble those developed by colonial educators and colonial administrators. For example, Namibian government reviewed a junior secondary examination in the country and found a clear cultural bias towards urban lifestyle and European culture. There is some qualitative research conducted in sub-Saharan Africa that teachers are less likely to be oppressive in classrooms if the teachers and students speak the same language. Mother tongue education does encourage active participation of students. I think there is a limitation to accommodate all the needs in different languages and cultures in formal education. Non-formal education can be often considered supplementary to formal schooling, but I consider non-formal education, community education, can be a strong tool to support mother tongue education, adopting the local and community values and needs. Thank you.
Congratulations. You did a great job. You see how lucky we are to have such thoughtful and thought-provoking World Peace Fellows. And Kozue speaks so beautifully about holistic education, but she also very much personifies it. So can I ask for questions? Let me make sure. We haven't gotten women in the first in the past, so I see one right there. Thank you. Come back to you, Jim.
Can you hear me? Yes. Sorry. Outstanding research. I was wondering if you could tell me what the literacy scores show when we are using mother tongue languages in the classroom for the Common Core curriculum. I feel that that's very important because if our literacy and the understanding of mathematics and science, reading, if they're improved, certainly that would change what we're doing with some of our standardized curriculum in our classrooms with textbooks, etc. Wondered if you had any of that information.
Sorry, I don't think I... could you explain a little bit more? I don't think I fully understand your question.
I think... I think. Could I try to synopsize it? So, was it about the literacy rates?
I am very interested in what her thesis was about, and how it translates into literacy and understanding of mathematics and science, the core curriculum that we are so emphasizing. If the mother tongue, using that language, shows an improvement, then we're educating the world.
Right. This is the work you've been doing.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't have specific scores or any evidence, but many countries in this region have been trying to use their mother tongue in science or math or different subjects, and then the topic comes to, like, for example, if students are learning in their mother tongue, studying math and science and language, but if they still use the curriculum inherited from the colonial era, which it's very different from their culture, like some maybe Western, I don't know how to explain, but maybe there is a cultural difference in Western countries and those African countries. I think the question would be what's the best way to respond to their culture needs or language needs. Sorry, I have something in my mind, but sorry, I can't just explain it well.
I think you did. You did a great job. That's it. All right, so I'm going to let Jim go next, and then we have you over there.
Just wonder about a parallel between your presentation and Rachel. Both of you seem to propose a multicultural approach. In her case, in yours, it's mother tongue and universal, or whatever you want to call it, colonial language, both as transitional teaching. And in her case, it's mother history transitioning into liberal history, perhaps. Is that a valid parallel?
It's a tough question, and I don't think I have a specific answer to it. But one thing I noticed from research is that I've been reading books and articles written by professionals and people from older generations who experienced colonization and still remember the struggle against the colonization. But now, younger generations who didn't experience the colonization or don't know much about colonization, they don't really see English or French as a colonial languages. So the question is how children just simply think English as a means of way to access information on internet or maybe achieve higher education. So how would you then teach those colonial languages or maybe global language to the children?
Okay.
So, excuse me, I want to substantiate the importance of this emphasis on teaching in the mother tongue and the work done using EGRA, the early grade reading assessment, which was developed by the World Bank and has been widely used, substantiates it. And I just want to ask how you see that we can move forward in creating change. I worked for the Ministry of Education in Djibouti, which is in northern eastern Africa, the Horn of Africa. And I watched little girls, especially, who were entirely lost because the medium of instruction was French. And they were nomads who only spoke their mother tongue, and no effort was made to address their needs. So it became a bigger issue of not just how we present primary instruction, but how do we keep girls in school, because we know the importance of girls' education. But I had no influence in encouraging the use of mother tongue.
I think the educational policies, international education policies, used to more focus on just, as I said, like primary school enrollments or literacy rates. And they're trying to bring children just into classrooms. And then the question was like, so now like 40 or 50 students in a classroom with a teacher who doesn't have much teaching experience or doesn't really know how to teach, and they don't have much textbooks or chairs or desks. So how would you go forward? And I think, fortunately, I think a lot of people started more focusing on quality education, and I think mother tongue is one of the elements. And I was lucky to find a lot of reports and publications published by UNESCO or World Bank or other organizations. So I think this issue is getting bigger and bigger, not just in Sub-Saharan Africa, but also in, I found quite a lot of materials about Papua New Guinea, because they have so many languages, and the government has been really trying to encourage this mother tongue education with different languages. So I think we just have to keep going, and yeah.
We have time for one more question, and we have a brave person way in the back, so make sure the folks in the higher echelons get a chance. Anna, can you run upstairs? Thank you. Right up there. Run. Good job. That brave high hand, that's wonderful.
Thank you. My name is Clement. I am from Southern Sudan. In South Sudan, we have 65 plus languages. And when I speak, I always switch between English and 7 other languages in South Sudan. But even until now, I will say that I know English better than any of the other languages, although I read and write my language. So my question is, what is the difficulty that you see implementing such an education model that you presented in a multilingual country like South Sudan? What official language can they use then, for example?
Yeah, I think one of the tough questions is that there are just so many languages spoken in each community or each country. How would you choose one or a few languages at the formal education? And I think, as I said, I think there is a limitation, and I think mother tongue education should be strengthened, not through formal education, but also community education.
Okay, thank you. Well done.